looks like you're on your knees praying for success.
That's right. One of the things I wanted to point out, Chris, is although it's still messy, it's now an organized mess.
Yeah.
And one of the design elements I wanted to try was to use Ikea off-the-rack shelving as my bench work.
Yeah. So doing that, what does that give you?
So you basically you get adjustable shelves to vary according to what you want to store. It allows me to divide up, you know, my tools and my structures and my freight cars, etc.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it gives a good solid base to your layout. So if you think about an IKEA unit as being 48 inches high, I have L girders on top of that.
Yes.
And then 3/4 inch plywood and 2 inches of foam and 1/4 inch of cork road bed. And that allows me to have my layout at 51 inches, which seems right for me. I'm 5'7", and that seemed to be about the right height for me to work at.
Well, it seems to me there's a huge advantage to this. One of them is that you don't have to worry that your cuts are all the same.
That's right.
All your pieces are factory cut. All of the parts that go into that make sure that you have pretty much a flat surface. I guess you need a flat floor.
Well, and one of the modifications I did to the IKEA units is I put leveling screws on the feet.
All right.
Just because this floor is far from level. But it allows me all kinds of flexibility in terms of putting an L girder in and still having the shelving that I needed. And basically it's at a price that I couldn't build it for. It's a box frame with the L girder.
Yeah, and these pieces here, they come as well, these shelving units?
The shelving units, you can buy as many or as few as you want.
Right.
They're adjustable depending on what you're storing. And you know, they make things pretty rigid. I mean, that's a good solid structure.
No kidding. I guess it's all the way it's angled and screwed together. And I'm sure you need at least one shelf in order to give it that kind of
you need
rigidity.
one shelf at a minimum. But you know, as I start to organize and hopefully get more of the stuff that's under the layout on top of the layout,
sure, then
I can design it to, you know, if it's books or if it's photos or whatever you're storing, you can match your shelving.
So if you wanted to add a shelf, for example, what would you have to do? Are they like little pegs or something?
There's little pegs that go into the slots here.
Yeah.
And basically you just put another shelf unit in.
Slide it in and boom, it's there.
So these are 20-inch wide shelving units on this side, and in the peninsula on the other side they're 12 inches.
Okay.
So you have some choices there, but again, you know, you can go to IKEA and fill a trunk full of bench work and you're good to go, and you're up and building pretty quickly.
If you might not mind asking me, for a room this size, it's what's the size of your layout room?
So this room is 24 by 14.
So in a 24 by 14 room, and when you put the elements around the outside, what would be the cost of the framing roughly?
I would say that you're probably building framing for under $1,000.
That's not bad.
When you consider that you have the shelving, you have the convenience of being able to assemble it by yourself.
Yeah. All the metal hardware.
The hardware, and you know, you're getting material that's pre-finished, pre-dried.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting because, you know, I've built modules before, and just a simple 2 by 4 foot module with its adjustable legs and the construction of it can cost you well over $100 just to do one 2 by 4 foot module. So that's really quite reasonable to do it this way. And the cost of wood these days, when you're looking at and its quality, which is a big problem with pine and different 2 by 4s or 1 by 6s or whatever you're using. This is dry, it's dependable,
and it's readily available.
and readily available.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. A great idea. I'm interested in your swing mechanism because many people have designed them in the past, but they've always run into trouble with it staying level and getting the track to line up properly. So what elements are there in the building, the one you built, in order to keep it all engaged? You've got one heck of a barn door piece at the end there. That's a hunk of steel if I've ever seen one.
So yes, I was worried about how I would support the weight because it is about 6 feet long, spanning the staircase and the aisle, and so I went into Winchester and I had them custom weld this this flange and support piece. It will actually lift out, but there's a flange that runs the full length in which I can attach my plywood.
So I can see this big steel flange here that runs the whole length.
That's right.
And it doesn't move. It's basically solid, eh?
That's right.
Okay.
So that's
a hunk of steel.
I was worried about flexing.
Yeah.
And so anyways, what I attempted was just to try and have a sturdy base in which it would swing, and then I support it on one of the columns of the staircase when it's not in use.
When it's in use, though, looking at it the way it is right now, you actually attach that with a piece of plywood behind to that Ikea benchwork?
Yes, there's a piece that's screwed on to the end of the Ikea benchwork.
That gives more stability?
More stability than just putting it on a leg. And you can see the L girder is here, and the same L girder is on the other side. And
can you point that out? Just if you could back up just a bit here, so I can. Where you are there.
So there's your L girder.
Yeah.
And there's basically the plywood end piece.
Yeah.
And then you have 2 inches of foam
right
up to your layout height. And so this is just butting up to the bottom of the girder. It's just a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, which gives me a little more to attach this flange piece to.
Yeah. Now, is there a spacer in behind the plywood as well?
In behind here?
No, right there.
Here, yes. There's a block of essentially 2 by 6.
Okay. So it's pretty solid there.
It's solid.
Yeah. Now, does it, when you swing it in and out, is there any up and down movement at all, or is it just...
There is some movement, but if you look on the other side, there's a shelf piece there that basically holds it in place, both vertically and horizontally.
Yeah.
And then I use a couple of bolts just to hold it in place.
Okay.
And then, of course, you see the wiring that gives me my feeders onto the bridge track.
And at this end, to lock it in, you have sort of a bolt latch of some sort, eh?
A bolt latch. I initially designed it so those bolt latches would carry the electrical power for each of the tracks, but I discovered that they're only a brass finish.
Yeah.
And they don't actually conduct electricity very well. So that's why you have the trailer hitch. I haven't come up with any more innovation than that right now, but relying on the bolts solely to make the electrical contact, I was getting frustrated.
Sure.
So word of caution, they look like brass, but they're not brass.
That's the way it goes all the time these days, eh?
That's right.
Okay, that's great. Are there any other elements we should be looking at? So when you built the Ikea shelving, you were talking a little bit about L girder construction underneath, on top of that.
That's right. So this is the Ikea shelving unit here.
Yeah.
And basically this is a L girder that I've made to attach all the shelving units together.
Yeah.
And on top of that L girder, I've made another mini L girder, which allows me to screw the plywood from below.
Okay.
I had a mistake of doing it from above on my last layout, and once you put the scenery on, you can never find the screws. And if you want to make a change in where this girder is,
Yeah.
it's just about impossible. And so if I wanted to do a modification, or I needed to change it for a switch machine or something, I can easily move these girders around.
And that upper girder is also screwed in from below, from the lower girder, right?
It's always screwed from below.
Yeah, so you can pull it out anywhere you want, move it.
Yeah, I also thought if there was a time when the layout had to come down, this would be an easier way of disassembling it from just screws from below. So every Ikea unit is screwed into the girder, and it just, once you start to put them all together, then it really does make for a rigid structure.
Right.
And so for this wall size, which is about 10 feet, I have 2 shelving units.
Right.
And an L girder that joins them.
So this piece here is Ikea.
Yes.
And this is your L girder that you put in?
That's right.
This piece that goes across that you drilled your wire holes through, that's a piece you added?
That's an additional piece. I added the Ikea pieces here, right there, and these.
So that piece that you added there for the wiring is just a little bit bigger, so the wires pass underneath the Ikea frame.
Well, that was the intent. It wasn't necessarily executed that way.
Okay.
But basically, you can see this is because of the bridge unit. A lot of the bus wires end here. So I have a bus for the turnout control, the various power districts, and my lighting.
Right. Okay. So Greg, when I was here a few years ago, your modeling space was limited, and I remember you building all your structures on the dining room table, and there was always that element of closeness, I guess you could say, between whether you're going to use that table to get some modeling done or whether you're going to have breakfast in the morning, and sometimes you had to share the space, which probably caused a bit of friction in the family.
That's right.
So when you rebuilt your layout, there were some new thoughts and ideas of what you might do. I mean, you're out here on the farm, you've got buildings and all kinds of things going on. What have you done?
So Chris, I decided that I needed a workspace, and I was largely evicted from the kitchen after having the Lindsay shops on the kitchen table for well over 2 months.
Yeah.
And I knew that I had a lot of structures to build, and I had worn out my welcome in the kitchen, so I had to do something. So I have a drive shed that's part of our farm operation, and I insulated a part of it and lit it. And I have a space for a table saw and my woodworking tools, but I also have a modeling bench here that I can leave it messy.
Yeah.
I can work on various things. Right now I'm building a little plow kit for my machinery dealer, but I have my paints and I have my light and I have drill press and I've got my Dremel tools and all my paint storage, and I can do my soldering, etc. out here. And my wife doesn't worry about me getting paint on the table, on the floor, and I'm out of sight, and I can just enjoy myself. I get my music going out here, and I'm very happy. I have lots of natural light. I have a heater. I stay warm in the winter. A great place to do modeling.
Yeah.
And as you can see, I don't necessarily clean up perfectly when I'm in progress.
Well, that's all right then.